So I'm going to break this down. What I'm going to do here is to set some default state values for the text message. So it's going to be a string. And then we're going to have something like a input controller or text editing controller. So the text editing controller can be used to clear the text field whenever we send a message. So it's called the txt controller, which is the text editing controller class. And I think I have to import that because it's not yet imported. This is text editing controller. Sorry for that. So I think I'm not sped. Then we can now bring in the build. And then here we have the widgets with the context. So we're gonna return, for this one we are not using the material app. I just want to use the safe area directly. And then inside that safe area, we're gonna have a child for a scaffold. And inside there we have an app bar. It's an app bar. So for the app bar, I'm not gonna waste time doing that. So let me just bring it down. So if you check in one of our previous videos concerning Flutter and Signal application, so that's where I got all this from. So without wasting much of our time, let's just scroll a little bit down and continue. So below this app bar, we are then going to bring in the body. So the body is going to be a stack class or a stack widget, which is going to have children. Then it's going to have a list of widgets. So I'm not going to do this in such a way that it's going to be that professional, but our main focus here is just that we have a very full stack working application. So it's not going to be like when I'm creating a React Native application or when I'm trying to make it more professional. So our main focus, like I said, is to make sure that everyone can be able to build whatever they want to build with this. So inside here, we're going to use a store connector, which is going to take in the chat state, and we're going to return the list of messages. So I think we've already done this. And then here we have the converter, which is going to take in the store. Then I want to have access to store.state.messages. Then we have the builder, which is going to manage the renderer. Then we have the text messages. So let's just give it a messages, see messages over there, and then we're gonna have the return. This is going to accept the list view.builder. And inside there, just like we did on the first place, we have the item count, so which is the C messages.length. So it all depends. If you want to let's stick to messages. So let's not use C messages. So messages, there's nothing wrong with it, but let's make it small letters, and that should be it. And below here we're gonna have shrink wrap. So right now I can't remember for sure what the shrink wrap does, but hopefully when I remember, maybe in our next video concerning Flutter, I can tell you. Then we're gonna have a padding, which is going to take the edge inset.only, top of 10.0, bottom of 10.0 as well. So we also have the physics. So most of this right now I can't remember it, but just know that it works. So I would suggest that you still go ahead and check all these API. So we have scrollable physics, and lastly we have the item builder. So the item builder is going to take in the context and also the index. So right here we can return just a simple container before we proceed. So we are almost getting things done. I'm trying to format that, and that looks nice now. So we are trying to make sure that everything is controlled and working perfectly. So right here we have this item builder. We have to bring in we have to construct our text messages for each of these charts. So I'm thinking of, instead of us to go ahead with this, why don't we just connect our socket IO and make sure we don't have any error. And the mistake we are making here is, I think this was supposed to be state. Then we have the inbox. Yeah. So hopefully that should solve it. And I think this is stateful widget, not just stateless widget. Yeah. And hopefully that should solve it. And we're back. So let's save and quickly try out our application, even though that we are not going to get anything in any user that we click on. So I'm going to open the application and try to log in. Okay, right now we have to yet refresh. So let's just refresh that quickly. So I'm going to come here and log in with sam@gmail.com. Is Sam or, and I'll click on that login. So we already logged in right now, and it's going to grab other users except for this user that is currently logged in. So let me minimize this, and when I click on this user, we have to come into that inbox, and it's not working because right here, maybe I commented it out, and let me just quickly check. So yeah, I commented that out. I'm going to quickly refresh. So using hot reload, we can be able to click on this and come into this inbox. So right now we are inside our inbox and everything is almost done. So what I'm going to do is to come above the Init States here. I think below that you could see socket server. I'm going to grab this. Of course, you can find a way to keep this in a single place that you can be able to reuse it, but just for simplicity's sake, I want to make sure that we do it in such a way everyone can understand. I'm going to come over here and paste that. So I'm going to paste that and format. And above here, what I'm going to do now is to use the override and also use the init states. So with the init states, I'm going to call the init states. And here, whenever we open our chats, so take for example, we are chatting with a user and we come back to click on another user. So we want it in such a way that if there is any messages in our state, we have to clear the messages so that the messages that is going to load here is going to be the messages for that particular user. So the way I'm going to do that is to reset messages on each user inbox open. So that will be from our store. We are going to have access to the state.messages.clear. And lastly, beneath it, I'm going to connect our sockets, a new inbox chat sockets. So we're going to use the socket server to do that. And that's it. So right now we are done with the connection. What I'm going to do is to come below here inside this our socket server. So I'm going to first of all give this a comment of handle sockets events. So the okay, we already have handle socket events there. Yeah. So beneath here, I'm going to dispatch unique on a unique chat. So whenever you click on a user, we have to like dispatch something from our store. And before we proceed, let's go ahead and create those actions. So before I create those actions, I just want to make sure we have all our types done, all our types down here. So let me just go ahead and put that. because I want us to do it so that when we are working directly from our inbox and also from our chat action, we don't have to like come back and do it again and again. So what I want to do now is to add a comment here for add a message to messages. So whenever you chat a user, we have to populate the state array of messages. So we call it update messages action. So it's gonna be having some couple of key value pairs, which is going to be a string. And this one we have to set it dynamic because at some point we have to use something like a Boolean value. So we have messages, or you can give it an underscore of messages, and then you can use a constructor of update messages action. So right here you can use the this.messages, and we have to set the getter. So for the getter, I want to get all messages. Yeah, so this is what we're going to be using for the getter, and I have to format that. And the next one is add sent message to messages. So this is still going to be similar to this one. So this one is add sent message to messages. This is like pushing a particular send message as well to the messages array. So I'm going to call this one update dispatch message, just like we have for other ones. So we call it update dispatch message. So make sure that this is capital letter, and then you can go ahead to format your code. So we are done with the types, and I just wanted to make sure that we don't have anything to do with the types again. And let me just kind of check around. We have the error, we have the user action, then we have the all user action, we have the room, then update messages action, and also update dispatch action. So that's it. And the next thing I can now do is to come to our store. I want to go over to chat actions because we are done with the auth actions. So there are some couple of methods that we are going to be using. So the first one is for us to start the unique chat for that user. So whenever we click on a user, we have to start a unique chat for that particular user. So let me just go ahead and put it down here. I want to start a unique chat. So this unique chat is going to accept the store. It's going to accept the socket. Is going to accept the sender email, the person that is sending, which is the user that happens to be the current user, which is the sender me. So we have it as sender me, I think. And lastly, the receiver. So the receiver email, which is this dot receiver. So this is it. Then inside our chat actions, we are going to create that function. So here we have future. We have a future, and here we have void on unique chat. So don't forget to put the async. And here you already know that we do have the store. So let's just give it a store. We have the socket, which is the socket. We have the sender email, and also we have the receiver email. So don't forget to put like curly braces to wrap everything with curly braces. And for these ones, we can use at required. And also for this one, we can use at required. So let me format that. And inside here, we can now grab our shared preferences, and then we can start up a socket chat for both users, which is very simple. We can now use sockets.emit something called start, or an event start unique, chats. And then whenever we are starting this unique chat, we have to also emit the data of each user and also a room ID. Sorry, especially data for each user whenever we want to start a unique chat. So we're going to be emitting the sender email, which is the sender email, the receiver email, and that's it. So whenever we start immediately, whenever we open or click on any user to chat with, we just have to start a unique chat ASAP. So the next thing we have to do now is to come over to our back end. So right here is where we are going to be expecting that event. Then we can throw back something that we can use to open that unique chat. So right at the bottom here, we're gonna use socket.on start unique chat. So right here, when we start a unique chat, we have to grab the data that we are receiving. So we have the receiver email, the sender email. Then we are gonna have a callback. So with this callback, we can, let me just go ahead and format this code first. So we have this callback over here. So we already have the receiver email. I think this is totally wrong the way I did it here. This is wrong. So I can get rid of this, and yeah, that should solve it. So inside this callback, whenever we start a unique chat or click on a user, there are some things we have to check. First of all, we have to make sure we have to use the add user function. So this add user function receives both the receiver email and also the sender email. So just follow ahead, you will still understand what we mean. Then lastly, we have the socket. So if you come over to this add user function, we have the receiver email, sender email, and also the socket. What we actually want to do here is to make sure that this user has a chat history, but if they don't have a chat history, we have to find a way to make them have one. And then we have to generate a unique room ID for both of them, so that whenever the users want to chat, they don't have to like create another room ID, thereby making it making the room ID fixed, that anytime they want to chat, they use that to load their previous messages. Whether it's 5 years later or 10 years later, it's still going to be the room ID and the same messages, except the users maybe try to delete their messages or get it out of the database. So we can say here, if there is no receiver email or no sender email, we can return an error. You tried to add 0 chats. But in a case that was passed, we have to, so this was supposed to be users, so we can just use the receiver email and also sender email here. So creating our objects quickly. So what I'm going to do now is to check if there is a receiver email, let's say receiver email of same and sender email, or let's say, and my email is the sender email. So we have to use the chats. So I think we've not yet added the schema for our chats, which is very simple. Just come over here, then we have the, I think the schema folder, where is it? So inside the schema folder, let's go ahead and add some couple things. So right here, we are gonna add all the models. So first of all, we're gonna have a type of string of time, and I'm gonna give the default to date.now. Although you can also use your own unique timestamp you generated using moment. Then we have the receiver email, which is also a type of string, the sender email, as well as a type of string. So let me go ahead and copy that. And then lastly, we have the room ID, which is a type of string. And for this one, I'm going to set the required to true, and it's the room ID. So let's format that and save. So in our folder, sorry, in our mix file here, I want to check if the receiver email is the same thing like the receiver email here, and also the sender email is the sender email I'm sending to. I have to like interchange and check them. So we use the mongoose aggregate, which accepts an array of objects, and I have to use the match, which is going to check the receiver email and the sender email. So I don't even know why I added this user. Maybe I just totally forgot. So what I'm going to do here right now is, if this happens to be true, and so guys, just bear with me. I'm trying to like put things together, and I think I kind of realized that this code is not being reached. So yeah, it wasn't being reached. So like I said in the first place, let's say I open a user chat, I clicked on a user, I'm the one sending. So in this case, I have to check whether the receiver email happens to be the person I was sending to, and also the sender email happens to be me. Then we are still going to check it the other way around. Then what I'm going to do is to return that chat. So that unique chat, like I said, is going to have a room ID. So what I'm going to do now is to check if the chat.length is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, we have to stick to that chat. So we have to emit back something called open chat. And when we are emitting back, we have to emit back with the details, which is the sender email, receiver email, and also the room ID. So that's exactly what you see here. So we have the chat. So this chat should be coming from here. So that's exactly what you see here, and everything is fine. But in a case it is 0, like we don't have any chat that looks like that, we have to now check in a case that I am the sender and the other user is the receiver, like checking back. So we also use chats.aggregate. Let's just quickly copy this, the match. And then, so in this one, we are not checking the receiver email first. We are first of all checking whether the receiver email happens to be the sender email, which is going to be true for a user that just clicked on a user to chat, and also a receiver email over here. So just simple and similar to what we did. So let me just see whether I can break this down. So just leave it that way. Then I'm gonna call this one last attempt. Now inside this callback, I have to check if the last attempt as well is greater than 0. So in the case that it is greater than 0, we have to also emit open chat. So just change this to last attempt. Else, what I want to do next is, in case it is also 0, before we handle an else, okay, we already have the else statement which we are handling for this one, but in a case that we don't already have a chat that looks similar to this one as well, what we're going to do now is to open something called a new chat. I'm going to construct a new chat. So right here, I'm going to okay, I think it will be necessary for us to use something like users, let's say receiver email, and also the sender email. So I want to send back those users, and then we have a room ID which I'm going to generate using the UUID version 4. So this is the room ID, and I'm going to emit that, then store it in our MongoDB. So I'm going to emit open chat, and I'm going to emit the new chat details. And then lastly, I can now use the new chat. So if you check in our new chat, there are some couple things we specified here. First of all, we have the receiver email, sender email, and the room ID. So we have to store the users, then set a new unique ID with the UUID. So that's it. It's kind of looking good, but I think I can just construct a new room ID here using the UUID version 4. So whenever we are creating a new chat, we can just stick to this new room ID so that the IDs don't kind of differ. So we save that, and what we simply did here is very simple and it's very explanatory. So like I said, let's say this user want to chat with this user. So from my phone here, I am the sender and this user is the receiver. So when I open this, first of all, it's going to check whether the receiver email and the sender email, we do have a chat like this in our chat history MongoDB database. But in a case we don't have it, it's now going to check whether the receiver email happens to be me that is sending, and the sender email happen to be the receiver. So in any one of them, it's going to emit if found, but if it doesn't find still, it's going to now create a new chat. So when next we are revisiting or trying to chat with this particular user again, it's going to try to run this attempt, and then it's going to stop around somewhere here or here, because we already have a history like that, a history like this, or a history like this stored in our chat, and then it's going to emit open chat with those details. So that's just very simple. So right here you could see the last attempt are just the details. So I'm just going to come back here. So we have to emit that unique chat coming from our inbox. Let me just go ahead and close all this, and also close the auth actions, it's not necessary. So right here in our inbox, we emit. So we emit with this data, and right here we emit to start, we dispatch, then right here we emit to start a chat. So quickly I'm going to restart our application. In case we do have an error, we are gonna know from our MongoDB database. So that was MongoDB database, I mean from our Nodejs server. So right here we are seeing an error on socket on line 15, and let's go ahead and fix that. So on line 15 here we have receiver email, and it's kind of I think from our, so we have the receiver email here, and I think it's the same spelling. So we have, yeah, and if we're having error, the error should definitely be coming from here. So I'm gonna comment this out, and I have to console.log the receiver email and also the sender email, because if these values are not passed, definitely we should see errors. So sorry for that, guys. I was able to figure out what the problem was. So right here I was using double let's say I was doing something like A and B, which was very wrong. So I was supposed to just stick to one of these, which is something like this. Then if I want to use the structuring, I can now use the structuring of receiver email and also the sender email. Then for any callback, I can still use any callback here if it is necessary, but I don't think we actually do need that. So getting back our add user, so just go ahead and bring it back, and then pass the receiver email. So we have the receiver email and also the sender email. So that solves it. And one more thing that we forgot to do was, if you check closely here, you could see we have the, when I console.log that out, I saw that the values we are not actually sending, the sender email and the receiver email. So inside your IntelliJ IDE, come back to the user list. So right here, you could see we are passing some values that the sender and also the receiver, we are passing it down. So it's very simple. Just over here, you can just pass it down as well. So for this one, we have the, I think the sender me. So let me just use a string there, and the receiver. So let me also use a string here. So that shows us it's working. So for the sender is going to be the current user. And if you can recall, we have something like, I think from the, okay, let's do it this way, guys. So right here, I think what we can do is to, let's use the user, and I want to give this a user, which is going to come from our store.state.user. So that's better. And we can just come down here and pass that user. Then for the, I think, okay, we have the user.email since it's a string that we are passing, which is fine. Then for the receiver, we have the filtered users, then index, and then the current email of that user. I think, how did we get the, okay, all users. So this is all users. So formatting that is okay. So we have the receiver and also the user that is sending. Then back in our server, so I just want to console.log and make sure that everything is working perfectly. So right now, clicking on this user, you can see we have the receiver email and also the sender email. So the sender email is me, which is actually correct, but the receiver email happens to be showing us an email address we don't really understand. So we are using name and we are supposed to be using email. So coming back here, sorry for that. Coming back here, this is supposed to be email. Email, and inside our compass we are supposed to be using the email. Why are we getting the name? So from here, I think the problem is because we actually interchanged some values, because if you check here, if you check from our user list, everything looks nice, but let's check in this user data. We have the name, then the email. So right here we have the name and also the email. So we interchanged these values. That was why we are having that problem. So let's quickly refresh, and you could see the receiver email, which is james@gmail.com, is now showing whenever we click on this user, and the name is showing. So we interchange this, and whenever the emitter happens to get the event, it kind of uses the email here and the name here, but right now everything is fixed. So coming back in our inbox, or let's say in our server, I'm going to uncomment all these I commented. So guys, don't forget to hit that like button, and let's make sure everything is done. So everything is set, and what I'm going to do right now is to refresh one more time. So we have the UUID, because I didn't use UUID v4. So right here I'm using UUID v4, but over here I'm just using UUID. So this is supposed to be v4. So let me just use UU. So sorry for that, guys. UUID v4. I think that's better. So don't forget to add the parentheses at the back, and also for this one, and that solves for all of them. So that solves it. So sorry guys for this inconvenience, but we are almost coming to the end of our tutorial. You just make sure that everything works fine so that we don't have error. And this is one of the best applications I've built so far because I built it in a solid way and in a way that everyone can understand it. I'm going to click on the user now, and right here we don't have, or do we still have another error? Hopefully we shouldn't, but so let's check mix.js on line 31. Mix.js on line 31. Then something is wrong, and that's because I'm using small v. So this was supposed to be a capital V. So this time around, I'm sure we don't have any other error. So let's click on the user once again, and oh my god. So what is it again? Something emit of undefined. So that's because we are not yet passing something here. So coming back to this socket, and because we tried to fix the error, we forgot to pass the socket down here. So go ahead and put that and save and refresh one more time. So this time around, I'm sure we shouldn't have an error. I'm going to click on this, and at this moment everything is working fine. We don't have an error, and if we check in our MongoDB compass and refresh, inside the Flutter signal we should get the chart. We should get the chart schema because we already have stored the charts. I don't think we shouldn't have that because inside our mix we did it in such a way that, okay, we didn't add a save here, so we didn't use save over here. So just go ahead and save that, and let's do one more refresh. So our user is logged out because we have done more than 1 hour. I'm going to log in again with sam@gmail.com, and I'm going to put the password quickly and log in this time around. And if we check now, if you click on this user and check now in our compass, I don't know why we are getting a lot of error. So our room ID is required, and so sorry guys once more time because this was supposed to be room ID. So I kind of still forgot. I know we are trying to fix errors, but it's very best that we fix errors along because it kind of helps us to know what to do, and also to know how to follow things like this up whenever we have errors. So imagine working on a Kotlin front end or Flutter front end and working with Nodejs. That's two different things altogether, but this is best way. So this time around I clicked on it and we didn't get any error, and when we come back here and refresh this time around, you could see we have the charts and we have one chart history with a unique room ID. So this is what these two users are going to be using to chat with each other every time and anytime they click on each user. So whenever they come back here, the socket kind of disconnects, but whenever they come here, it connects them with that unique. So you could see whenever I come back here and click here, there's a new connection, but this time around is going to be using that unique room ID to make sure that these two users chat with each other. So let's go ahead and catch the event for open chat in our Flutter application. This kind of looking like a Kotlin to me. So coming back to our chat action, so I'm going to use the sockets.on. For this one we have, so I don't know why why are we having an error? We shouldn't be having an error. I'm seeing a potential error here, trying to figure it out. Okay, the error goes away. So we have socket.on. So I guess you already know that we have open chats and we are gonna grab the user. So right here, if you can recall, in our server we are emitting the users with the room ID, and also we save that. So right here we are gonna have that data. So I'm gonna call this a mobile room. So this mobile room is going to be storing in our local storage. So we have string of string, I'm going to call this a mobile room, and we are going to use it to construct a chat which is going to be stored on our local storage. So we have new map, and for this mobile room I'm going to have a key of receiver email, which we are going to be grabbing from the user. Then we also have the sender email. And then we have the room ID, which is going to have the room ID as well. So right here we've used these chats, or we can call this a mobile room or a mobile chat, but as you can see here, it's part of the rooms that is going to be stored in our local storage, because our rooms are going to be a list of rooms. So permit me to use that, or an array of rooms. That would be the best. So what I'm going to do now is to grab that room from our local storage. So right here you could see we are using the prefs, or the shared preferences. So this shared preferences is going to first of all grab something from our local storage called unique rooms getter. So I call it unique rooms. So it's just an array of unique rooms. We are going to populate this and make sure that each chat we click on, we store that room inside one of these, or inside this list. Then we have a dynamic of unique rooms. So this unique rooms is going to first of all check whether the unique room getter is null. Let's say in a case that maybe we just downloaded the application and we are yet to chat a user. So we have the unique rooms getter is equal to null. So if it is null, we have to set it to an empty array, or else we have to use json.decode. We have to now decode our unique rooms getter. So we are still decoding an array. So when we decode that, it's going to still be an array. So what you're seeing here, in a case that is null, of course it's going to be the null, because it's going to be null. Right now we don't have anything inside of it. So anyways, both of them are going to return an array or a list. So I can say if the unique rooms getter.length is greater than 0, we have to perform some actions, but in case it's not greater than 0 as well, we are still going to perform some action. So first of all, let's work on when it is not greater than 0, or when it is still empty. So what I'm going to do is to get the unique rooms.add this mobile room that we just constructed, and I think this happens to be inside here, because we have to make use of that mobile room. So we can just add that and format it, and then we can now store it as a string into our unique local storage using the json.decode unique rooms. So at this point, I don't want things to get complicated or confuse you. I just want to make you to understand this. So let's go ahead and print unique rooms before we proceed. So I'm going to quickly refresh. And I'm going to click on this user, but before I click on that user, I want to show you what will happen in our console. So when I click on this user, hopefully we shouldn't be getting an error, but let's kind of check out what the problem is. So we are getting an error here. The getter was called a null. So guys, the problem was because we used the unique rooms getter here. This was supposed to be something else. So this is going to be null in the first place. So let's stick to unique rooms over here. And even if we refresh, so let me just go ahead and refresh that. So like I said, it's going to add that, and it's going to print out that room that was created or that's already in our chat history. And I'm going to click on that user right now. So when I click on this user, you could see we have the receiver email, the sender email, and also the room ID, and that's exactly what we have here, E1B. So the next thing I'm going to do is to dispatch the current room ID into our initial state value. So our initial state value coming from our reducer. So right here we have active room. So I want to store the active room ID in this active room in case we want to use it in any part of our application. So you can just use dispatch, and we're going to use the updates. So you can use the updates room action, which is going to accept a string, and the string is going to be coming from our user room ID. So this is room ID. So that's it, and we can save. And lastly, let's now join these two users because we already have everything. And one more thing, please don't forget to set this, also store this in the local storage. Store new room to local storage, or let's say push store/push, which is better. And then we dispatch that, update active room, and then lastly we can now start P2P new chat. So we have socket.emit join two users, which is going to join them using their email address, but it's going to now join them with that particular room ID. So here we are going to be sending the room ID, which is the user room ID. So that's how we can start a new chat. So when we refresh and come over to our server, we are going to start a new chat immediately. And back inside our socket file, I'm going to close this down and also close this schema. So back here, below this socket, we are going to have a socket.on join two users. So like I said, it's going to join them with the room ID. And here we're going to have a callback, which is socket.join the room ID. So right now we've joined that two users, and they both can be able to chat using the room ID. So all we have to now do is to listen for events. So when we listen for events, whenever the user send a message, we send it back to the other user using this particular room ID. So that's what we're going to do next. One more thing we didn't do earlier was to come to handle the reducer for this update room action. Let's just quickly do that. So inside here, I think we can create a chat reducer. So I'm going to use the chat state, and I'm going to call this one chat reducer. And then we have a dynamic of action. So we are going to return the state and add that to, let's add that here, the chat reducer. So we just have to add that there. So that's one cool thing I like about this Redux. And coming back in our chat reducer, so I can say if action is update room action. All I simply want to do is to return state.copy with. So then we have the active room as the action dot I think we have action dot room ID. So in our types, let's just quickly check that types and make sure we are in line. So we have update room action and the room ID. So everything is working nice and everything is connected nice. So what we want to do next now is to give a design for this in order for us to be able to type a message and send to this user, so that we can be able to use that message and send to our mobile device. So once we do that, once we are done with the design, I'm going to connect my mobile phone so that we can be able to communicate at least with a user while we are working together. So I'm going to first of all work on the design for sending a message. So beneath this store connector, I guess, yeah, I'm going to put a comma there, and I'm going to use the align widgets, which is going to have an alignment dot bottom left, and then we're going to have a child, which is going to be a container. So inside here we're going to have padding edge index dot only, left 10, bottom 10, and also top of 10. So you can add .0. So just to speed things up, I will not be doing most of that. Then we have a height of 60, and then we're gonna have a width of double infinity to make use of the full width. Then we are gonna have a color of colors dot white. Then for the child itself, we're gonna have a row, and then this row is gonna have a children with a list, and let's just give it the widget type. So the first one here is going to be the gesture detector. So inside there we're gonna have the child of a container. So these are just for icons. You know, if you want to use icons, you can just wrap them in a gesture detector. Maybe you want to handle something like on tap or on touch, something like events, you can just use this. So I just have to add that for you to use it later at your own choice. Then we have the width of 30 as well, a decoration of box decoration. Then we have the color of colors dot light blue, a border radius of border radius dot circular, and then the size of that, and beneath that we are gonna have a child of icons dot add, and then we have the color to be white, colors dot white, and we have the size to be 20. So let's go ahead and format this. So beneath this gesture detector, I want to use a size box to space things out a little. Then we can continue to complete the design. So this is sized box. So we're gonna use the expanded widgets here, and we're gonna have a child, which is going to have a text field. So here we're gonna have the controller. So if you can recall, in the first place we had to bring down our controller, and we called it the TXT controller, which we are gonna be using to clear this text field whenever we tap on the send button. Then for the decoration, we have to use the input decoration to design the inputs. So here we are gonna have the hint text. As for the hint text, let's say write a message. Then for the hint style, you can use the text style color of colors, the black. 54, and also the border of input border. We don't want a border, and I think that should solve it. Then inside this text field, I want to handle for the unchanged. Whenever we are typing, we use the unchanged, which is going to have a callback. I don't think we should get that error because, okay, let's just gradually do it again, but I don't think we should get that error. So make sure it's below the text, or sorry, it's below the input decoration. So I don't know why we had that error, but I don't think we should. Then we're gonna have the text message that is going to be showing whenever we are typing. I think the problem should be from me then, because if I break this down, it closes. Then I went to add another curly braces. So that's it. And lastly, let's add the button. So after this expanded, I want to add another size box, which is going to give us a little bit space. And we're going to use the floating action button. So the floating action button, which is going to have a child of icons.send, a color of colors.white, and also a size of 18. Then we have a background color of colors.blue. Then for the deviation, something like a shadow, I just want to set that to 0. So let's format that and save and refresh quickly. So right here you could see that nice looking send and also the gesture detector for, like, maybe you want to add something like images, you want to attach it. So everything is working fine. When we type, we can definitely send. So what I want to do next is whenever we tap on that send, I want to clear whatever is inside our input. So in this floating action button, I'm going to add the unpressed, which is going to give us our own callback. So what I want to do here is to use the text controller.clear. So it's going to clear anything. And also inside this text field, we can come over to this txt message. I can say if the txt message.length, or we can't even do that. We don't even need to do that. What I can just do is to reset, to update it from our state. I can just say the message. Sorry guys for that. So I'm kind of interchanging this. So this was supposed to be here, like clear the states. So I have to clear that state and also clear the input. Clear the input. Then for this one, for this unchanged, is very simple. All we want to do is to use the set state. So like I wanted to do before, I can say if the text message dot length is greater than 0, I want to use the text message and set it to this message. So whenever we now tap, let's say we now tap on send here, it's going to clear all those things, but first of all we have to dispatch before we clear anything. So let's say dispatch a send message with event. So the event is going to be coming from the method. I can now use the store.dispatch. Then I can use the onsend function I'm going to create quickly. So inside this onsend function, we have to pass in the socket, the store as well. Then the text message is going to be underscore text message the sender email, which is the email currently using the phone. We have sender.me. So this is sockets. And then lastly, we have the receiver email, which is the receiver. So let me make sure that these are found. And right here, we can't find this for no reason. I can't tell. Okay, it's over there because I was thinking, why can't we find that? So that's it. So what I'm going to do next now is to create this function inside our chat actions. So right now we have that on send created, and you could see the socket, the text message, sender email, and receiver email. So there was something I observed, that whenever we open the user chat, we kind of get error which we shouldn't get. And to fix that is just simply come and change this to encode. So this was supposed to be an encode, and hopefully this time around we shouldn't have any error because we don't expect one either. I'm going to click on that user, and right here you could see we don't have any single error. So that shows us that everything is working perfectly. And even if I refresh this application again, you should see that this should not return just an empty array. It should return a list of users, a list of user chats. And when I click on this user to chat with that user, you could see we have the list of user chats. So this is exactly how it is going to be for our local storage and also for our chats. But in our chats means that every user chat is going to be stored here. But for these particular users that chat with each other, their chats are going to be supplied to their local storage and record whenever they want to chat on their user. So there's still a lot of things we have to do. And right now, let's go ahead and go over to the unsend. So whenever we click, and let's say I type a message here and click on send here, you could see that message clears because we are using the test controller to clear that message. But right here, we want to be able to make use of that message. What I'm going to do here is I'll have to check if the message is equal to empty. So if it is equal to empty, I don't want to perform any action, but if not, we can now proceed. So I'm going to construct now. So now is going to be a new date time. So you will definitely know why we are doing this. Then we have to use a dynamic of formatted. So I call it formatted time, which is going to be the date time dot now. And I want to use the units timestamp. And I want to use microseconds since epoch. So what this simply means is that I think the UTC, so this is a function. So what this means that we are using the units timestamp, and the units timestamp is what you can actually use to sort the messages for it to be sorted with each particular time the messages we are sent or received. So we're going to be constructing the message that is going to be sent out or that is going to be stored in our database. Then here we have the map of string, dynamic. Then we have to compose a message with a new map. Although there are better ways to do this, but I just want to make this very simple. So when we are composing a message, for each composed message, so this is composed, not just compose L. We have the ID. So the ID is going to be the UUID dot version 4. Then I'm going to bring this down. Then we have the room ID, and the room ID is the active room ID. So that was why we kind of updated or dispatched the user room ID or the that particular chat room ID. So that's exactly what you could see here. So this is not supposed to be user, this is supposed to be chat. You can go ahead and change this to chat. So let me just quickly change that. Just go ahead and change it to chat. That would be better. And also for these ones, you can change it to chat. And lastly, this one. So after changing that, come back here. So you could see we dispatch that chat room ID to update our active room. And right here, we want to make use of it. So we have our room ID. I'm going to clear this, and from the store.state.active room. Then the next one is the text message. So far, the text message is filled and not empty. You can allow to have it. Then the next one is the receiver email, the sender email, the time. And lastly, we have the sender. So each mobile device is going to be the sender. So this one is a Boolean value. So that's why we did set it to dynamic. Then for the time, we're going to use the formatted time. Then for the sender email, we're going to use the sender email. And lastly, for the receiver email, we are using the receiver email. So that's it. Then lastly, we have to use the store.dispatch. So why we are using the store.dispatch is that we want to dispatch this to our messages array. So I'm going to use the update messages action, and mind you, it's going to accept the compose message. If you use something like a string here, definitely you should get an error. So we have to stick to what we have, compose message. And lastly, let's say push to messages. And lastly, we have to emit that socket.emit send to user, and we are sending the compose message. So the other user is going to see the message on his or her phone. But before we emit that, let me say emit to the receiver. So before we emit that, we have to make sure that this message, we can be able to see the message that we are sending in our own screen. So the way we can do that is to emit this, and in our reducer, we already have it handled. So we have, okay, we've not yet added that, and let's go ahead and do it. So in our chat reducer, I'm going to say if action is update messages action. We can use a list of since we want to push into that message, it's gonna be a list of key value pairs. So we have a map of string and dynamic. Yeah. Then we have the messages, which is the state.messages. Then we have to check if any message with the same, let's say with same ID exists. So why we are checking for same IDs, because we don't want a duplicate. So what I can do here is to use the dynamic message checker. So I just call it the message checker. And what we are going to do is to grab that messages dot. We are using the where clause. And here we just have to map it to M. We can say M ID is equal to action.allMessages ID. So this is going to filter out the one that have the same ID, because if you check here very well, if you check in our chat actions very well, you could see we have our ID, and this is the same ID we are going to be using to store this message in our backend, because we have to have a unique ID that is fixed for both our back end and also for our front end, in order to avoid duplicates and make sure that each messages are singularly sent and stored. So back in our reducer, so we can check if the message checker dot length is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, we don't want to solve that, we don't want to store that, but if it is not greater than 0, what we have to do is to add that message. So we can say messages.add the message that we constructed, and we are passing through our reducer from action.allMessages. So I have to make sure that it is the same thing, because we have to check our types. So in our types here, we have all messages. So we can just change this to messages. I think that's the best, because we are not like grabbing all messages. So change this to messages, and also change this to messages. And that should solve it. And lastly, we have to return state.copyWidth in order to update those messages, and then we can now pass the messages that is not like that has been added here, and also that doesn't have duplicates. So let's save that and come back here, and coming back to our inbox. So above all these, we are gonna, I think inside this container here, and so inside this container we want to be able to like show those messages. So if you check back here, you could see we have a sender which is true, which is going to be aligning our message to the left, while the sender's message is going to be at the right. So coming back here, first I'm going to add there is a padding. So I want to add left of 14, right of 14 as well, top of 10, and bottom of 10. Then we are going to have a child and give it an align widget. So the align widget is going to help us. So I want to make sure, okay, this is inside the store connector, because if we are not inside the store connector, we will not be able to like update this dynamically whenever something is updated. So this was supposed to be, okay, let's just stick to dynamic, because I was thinking of setting this to like the messages type, but dynamic is also good. So I want to have an alignment, just like I said. If you could recall, we have a sender. So if the sender happens to be true, I want the alignment, so this is capital A, alignment dot top left, or else we have alignment dot top right. So I don't know why we are getting, okay guys, I think I know why. So let me just set this to true. So I don't want to complicate things for now. Let's just go ahead. Then we have the child. The child is gonna be a container as well. Then we have a decoration of box decoration. So this box decoration is for the background. We have a border radius of border radius dot circular 20, and then we have the color. So let me just say true is equal to true again. We have a color 0xFF, and we use this color code, or else we use colors.gray shade 200. So you're still going to know the reason why we are doing this. So this, like when I'm the one sending, I want my messages to be at the left with a background color, while the other user that is sending to me is going to be at the right with something like a fair color. So after that box decoration, I think we can add a padding here, yeah, with the edge insert dot or 16. Then we have the child. So the child is going to be the message itself. So first of all, I have to pass the message, which is the string. Why are we getting that error? So we don't yet have a message, so sorry for that again. So let me just add let's say MSG here, and then for the style we have a text style of font size of 13 and a color of, so let's say true is equal to true again. So because it's gonna have a, I am the one sending, I'm gonna have a background color of something like greenish color. I have to give it a color text of white. Then the other user is gonna have like a light color. We want to give it a black of 87. So let's save that, and let's kind of refresh our application. At least we should see something like MSG if everything works perfectly. So that's showing us that everything worked perfectly. So whenever I type here and send, at least we should see we should see like MSG, but for some reason I don't know why we only get one. Let's check here. So let's check. So the problem was because we are using an ID here. Just put an underscore in front of this, because if we use an ID, we are just using an ID that we didn't like construct. So here you could see we constructed our own ID, which is not really bad. So just make sure you fix that, and that should definitely work. So whenever I come here and type anything, at least we should see that MSG. So right now, let's go ahead and see our messages. What I'm going to do is to come back here, and above here, I'm going to like create some things. I think that should be above here. Yeah. So the first one is going to be a bool of sender. And the bool of sender is going to be coming from our messages. We have the current index and then the sender. So because it's stored directly into the database, we should be able to receive true as the one sending. So all our messages are supposed to be at the left. Then also we have the text message. We also have to grab the text message. So right here we have true is equal to true. I just have to change this to sender, and also change this one to sender as well. And lastly, change this one to sender. Not lastly, I mean. And then lastly here, you can change this one to text message. So save that and refresh once more. But do not forget to change this one to a string. It's not a bool. So one more time, refresh. And click on that user you want to chat with. And let's just say hello. So when we type hello, and let's say how are you. So you could see right here we have how are you. That shows that everything is working fine. We are almost getting done. So the next thing now to do is to come over back here, and we have to emit send to user. So we want the second user to be able to receive the message. So what I have to do is to come over here as well. It's very simple. So let's just speed it on. I can say socket.on send to user. So which is going to have access to that data. So I don't want to use the structuring because it's just a straightforward something. I want to broadcast to the second user, only the second user that will be able to receive this, to data.room ID, because both of them are connected in the same room. Then we have to emit dispatch message to that user, and we are dispatching everything that we sent through. And what I'm going to do next is to destructure everything. So we have the sender email and also the receiver email, the time, text message, and data. So let me close this. So what I'm going to do next is to store this message that has been sent into our messages schema. So come over to your schema. You can see we do have the messages schema, and let's go ahead and add that and add the models to it. So inside these models, we have the ID with a type of string, the room ID with a type of string as well, and we want it to be required to true. Then we have the sender email, the receiver email as well. We have the text message, and lastly we do have the time that we constructed. So for the default of that time, we can say the default is date.now. Then for the text message, we have to set the required to true. Then for the email as well, and also for the sender email. So coming back to our server, I just have to use the schema. Then inside the schema, let me put this down first. I have to now pass the ID, room ID, sender email, then we have the receiver email, time, and lastly we have the text message. So let's save that again and refresh. We should be able to see the message that we sent in our MongoDB database. So everything was able to send properly, but the only issue we have here at this point is we are not able to get the room ID, and that's probably because right here, let me just uncomment this. Right here we are requesting for the room ID, but we are not passing it, and the problem is because if you check back in our chat actions, we have handled the logic for a new chat or whenever the users just started chatting each other. But what in the case that they already chatted each other and we have this in our local storage, that is the unique rooms already attached in the list of our local storage. So we can't access this room ID, so we can be able to access it here. And let's go ahead and fix that. So what I'm going to do here is quickly, I'm going to check, let's say, check if our unique chats does contain a chat with, let's say, with this current room ID from database, else add it to unique rooms. This is in a case that we have like something already stored in our unique rooms. So we have a dynamic list. So this dynamic list is going to take our unique rooms dot where. So we want to search for that room ID. So I can say, so for each of these room ID, or let's say this is chats, which is better so that you can understand it better, is already equal to user room ID. So if this is greater than 0, that shows us that it's greater, like it has something in it. So let me just change this to let's say arrow, because we already have chats at the top. Okay, we have chats, not chats. So this is chats. Sorry guys, quickly change this to chats again. Now we want something like a little delay before we will be able to proceed, because we don't want to just do things faster in order for our application not to crash. So that's why it's advisable to use something like a spinner that maybe just 200 milliseconds is okay for that. So we can use the future.delayed You can add a duration of microseconds, and we can add 2 over there. So if the list.length is greater than 0, let's say, first of all, let's handle in a case that it is not in that unique rooms. So if it is equals to 0, like if none of these charts or the current chart exists already, we still want to do similar to what we did here. So I'm just gonna copy this and paste it, and what I'm gonna do is to also open the P2P charts for both of them, and lastly we have to update the active room. So these are just the steps that we are just doing, which is very simple, but I think this should be above, or anyway, no, whether it's above or not above, it still works perfectly, because for us to use it on this place, for us to be able to get it here, we have to perform an action, a call to action, which is a send button. So we don't have an issue. So that's the only thing that we don't have room IDs required. So this time around, let's refresh and hope that everything works fine. And let's go ahead and click on this user and send like hello to that user. And let's check in our server. So everything went perfectly, and right now you could see that room ID. And if we come over to this compass, you could see we have the messages now appeared, and we have that first message. So all the messages are going to be here, but there's a way we are going to be listing it for each particular user so that we don't have a message clash, which is very, very cool. So we are almost getting to the end of the tutorial. So at this point, I'm going to create one more user or 2 more users. I'm going to quickly do that. So right now I created 2 more users, James and Nadine. So you could see the 2 users, and when we check in our MongoDB compass here, let me just refresh. So in the users here, we have like 3 users right now. So each of these user, I'm going to try as much as possible to open a chat with them. So this for the first user and this for the second user. And in our MongoDB compass, we have like 2 chats right now. We have chat with James and Samuel, and we have chat with Nadine and Samuel. So what I'm gonna do now is to be able to chat with the first user. So the first user starting with TSL, and that has to do with I think the name of that user is, okay, let me go to users. So that's user James. I'm gonna chat with user James, and I'm gonna leave user Nadine. So for James now, I can say, James, how are you? So I will send this message to James, and I also say, hope you are good. And I will send it. And then for this one, I can say, hello Nad, how are you? So you could see I send that. I can say, hope you are good. I can also send that. So when I come back and come to any of these, the messages doesn't display. So that's what we're going to be working on next. And also in our MongoDB compass, under messages, you could see all the messages are just in one single table. So I'm going to come over to our chat actions, and inside here in our chat action, before we create that method, or let me just quickly go ahead, I can grab this line and paste it, and I'm gonna call this one load unique charts. So it's going to load unique charts for each user. So we have the store, we also have the socket, and we have the current user email. So the current user email is a string, but it's required. Let's just set it to required over here. And lastly, we have the other user. So the other user is the user that we just clicked on. So I can use the required as well. Other user. So that's it. Then back in our inbox at the top here. So I'm trying to speed things up because our tutorial has actually taken a lot of hours. So back here, I can use the load unique user chats. So what I'm gonna do next now is to use the store.dispatch, and we can call that function load unique chats. So which is gonna accept, the first one is the store, the second one is the socket, the third one is the current user email, which is the store.state.user.email, the current user using the email address. Then we have the other user, the user that we clicked on. So this one is from the receiver, so we can use this to receiver. This is other user, I guess. Yeah. So back here, since I'm trying to load their chat, I'm going to load just the chat of that two user, and we just have to compile the data that we need. So we are using the chat details, which is a new map, and we can use the chat details. So we have the sender email, which happens to be the current user email, and then we also have the receiver email, which is the other user. So it's kind of good the way I'm trying to like interchange words so that you can actually understand it. And after that, what we're gonna do now is to use that socket.emit. So I wanna emit load user chat with the chat details. So we don't even need the store. So sorry for that. Sorry for passing that. You can just go ahead and clear it and format your code and save. So we have chat details. I don't know why we are getting this little error. So go ahead and change this to small or camel case, which would be the best. And that's it. So go ahead and save that, the load user chat. Then coming back to our server, so we're gonna have socket.on load user chat. Remember, we are sending the receiver email and also the sender email. So we're gonna have a callback. Then I want to be able to emit when the user is the one receiving and also when the user is receiving, but they must match the receiver and also the sender email. So the first one is going to be messages.aggregate, which is going to take in an array. So like usual, we use the match. It's going to match the receiver email and also the sender email. Then the next one is going to match where the receiver email is the sender email, and then the sender email is the receiver email. So whenever we find something like that, then we just have to like grab the chats. So I want to check if the chats.length is greater than 0. What we can do right here is to like, okay, so sorry guys, I was trying to like explain this better. So at this point, it's going to return an array of chats. So we want to emit each of those single chats rather than emitting that the whole array. So to do that, I will use the for loop and loop through. So I can say if the I is less than charts.length, then we have the I, we have to increment that value, and then we can use the socket.emit load unique charts, and then lastly we can emit each single chart using the iteration. So that's it for where the receiver email is the one receiving and also the sender email is the one receiving. So the next one now is in a case where the receiver email is the one sending and also the sender email is the one receiving. So what I can do here, so I can just like trying to locate where this ends. So this ends here. I can just go ahead and copy this. So for this one, we have to like give this a sender email and also give this one a receiver email. So what I can do also is to handle in a case that we don't have a message. So I can use the socket.emit, let's call it load unique chart as well. But this one I'm just emitting an empty object in case it's totally empty. So we're almost getting to the end of the tutorial. So I can just come back here, and what I can now do is to like group the charts. So I can use the socket.on load unique charts, then we can have access to that chart. So right here, let me just go ahead and print that chart. So that should be okay, and let's quickly refresh. So I emitted and I was not able to get that, and I suggest that we can definitely do this in a separate way than doing it together. So I can just get rid of this here. So let me go ahead and create one more function. Called, let me just grab this. So this one is going to be called group, something like group unique charts. So I also forgot to use assign here. So for this one, I just want to let me kind of check something quickly. I just want to have access to the store. So we have the store and also we have the sockets. So these are just the two things I want to have access to, and I want to listen to that event that will be emitted back to us. So we have load unique charts, and we're gonna have access to charts. As usual, I just want to print it out. So coming back in this inbox. Okay, we don't have, okay, yeah. Coming back with this this inbox, I'm going to add a comment here called group P2P charts. So you can use store.dispatch. Then we have group unique charts, and for this one I have the sockets. I have to bring down the socket and also the store. Oh, so sorry for that, guys. This should be the store. So I don't know why we have the store and the sockets. So it's not actually recommending to us, but I don't know the reason. Then we have the sockets. So okay, that error goes away. So saving it and coming back here, and also allowing this, I'm going to try to refresh again and click on a user to chat with that user to see whether the messages are going to be loaded respectively. So when I clicked on it, the message was able to load for Nadine, user Nadine, and you could see I'm the sender sam@gmail.com, and receiver nadine@gmail.com, and you could see hello Nad, how are you? And these are just the messages, and also it returned an empty object here because we don't have something for this second one. It returned an empty object, so there's a way we can handle that, which is very simple for us. So let's go ahead and handle that and store these messages in our state in order to display them whenever we click on that particular user. So if you come back to this inbox, you could see at the top here, there is something I added earlier on, messages.clear. So we research the messages state. Each time we click on a user chat in order to chat, we have to reset and immediately grab the messages and preload it into our state. So I want to preload these messages into our state. But before that, I kind of feel like I have to do the same thing that we did here on this one in order to make it more safe. So just go ahead and do it. Then we can come over here. So we already have that. Then we are gonna construct, we are gonna construct our array because we are going to be updating our messages whenever we open a new chat. So we're gonna construct a dynamic list called unique messages. Then I can say if the chat is empty, in case we are returning just an object. So if it's empty, we just have to return and do nothing, but else, if it is not empty, we can now construct our message, populate it to already existing messages if there is anyone, especially when we declare or when we are just typing. Then we now update that messages and display dynamically using the store connector. So I can use the map string dynamic. So we have the chat, new map. So we have the chat ID, chats ID. So make sure you change this to underscore because we want something to be fixed. Then we have the chat room ID. Let me just copy this from some couple of times. We have the sender email. We have the receiver email, we have the time, we have also the sender. So the sender is going to be aligning the messages for us respectively. So we can go ahead and fill the values. So for the room ID, we have chats, room ID. Then for this one, we have the chats, sender email, chats, receiver email, chats of time, and also chats. So for this one is gonna have sender email, and we have to make sure that it's equal to the store.state.user.email in order to return a Boolean value. So after that, we have to populate it to our all messages array. So we could say push all to messages. So we can use the store.dispatch new update messages action. So I guess you already know that you can now pass the chats for each chat, I mean. And if you also want to sort things, like because of the time, you can use the time from here and sort it before you'll be able to dispatch it. So let's just go ahead and refresh. I want to see my chat only with any user I click on, either James or Nadine. So let's just quickly refresh and check. So when I click on this user now, so we are getting an error, and let me kind of figure out what the problem is. So the problem, I think, is so it's talking about failed assertion, and that's probably because we are providing the wrong data to a wrong assertion. So we have the ID room, sender, receiver, time, and sender here. I think one thing we are missing here is the text message. So for the text message, we have to use the chats TST message. So I guess that should solve it, and let's dispatch each of those messages. We are dispatching the updates, messages action. So we are dispatching each of those chats, and that's it. So you can even go ahead like sort things out. So the way you can sort out this using the time is to populate this in this array, then sort it out, like resort everything before you'll be able to replace. Then you can create another type or use the reducer to replace all the messages, which will be the best also. So let me just refresh. I think hopefully this should work perfectly. So right now it's done, and you could see the chart I have here is the one for Nadine, and hope you are good. So let me say one more new chart. So I'm giving Nadine, user Nadine, one more new chart, and when I come back here and click on user James, so you could see user James, let's say user James charts. The chart here is for user James, while the chart here is for user Nadine. So you could see right now we have everything sorted out. So one more thing, like I was saying, is if you want to like sort this out using the Unit timestamp, it's very simple. You have to just like fill all these messages into this array, including the previous messages already in the array, or just fill it. You don't even need to fill the previous message. Fill it, and then you can sort it with time, then replace all the messages from the state with that same message. So right now you see we've done a lot of things, and everything is working fine. Everything is showing us that we're making a lot of progress. So the last thing remaining now is for the fact that when I send to this user, if this user texts me back, I will not be able to get it, and that's because we've not yet touched that. So coming back to this top, so you could see when I send to this user is going to resend to me. So using the room ID, and the user is dispatching a message. So we are going to catch that immediately, and then that will be the last thing we are going to do. But before that, let me just make sure that the app is already switched on my phone. So right now I have the app started on both devices, both on the emulator and also on my phone. So what we wanted to handle next was the fact that when we emit back from here, when we send to this user dispatches a message back to us. So you can now come over to this inbox class or inbox widgets, and beneath here, so let's say receiving messages, we can use socket.on dispatch message. We're gonna get the data back. So inside here we have to like construct the data just like we did for the previous one, string and dynamic. Then we have to call this one message. Then for this map we're gonna have message, we have message ID. So you can just go ahead and quickly do those things. We have the message.id. So I'm just going to copy this. Then we have the room ID. So it's just similar. Sorry guys for that. It's just similar to what we did here. So I think I'll just go ahead and grab this or copy that and come over here. Instead of us to waste our time typing all those down, we can just paste it. So you can get rid of it and copy it. So copy that and come here. So change all these to data. We have the data ID, we have the data room ID, we also have the data sender ID, data receiver email, data time, and also we have the data for text message, and then the data for who is sending, and we have we are gonna use so we have for this user, and let me just go ahead and change this first before we can go ahead and bring in our store. We also have the message here, so I even forgot that I can do this. Sorry guys for that. I can do this, then oh no, so it's kind of long. I use Vim, but when I do use Vim, sometimes I remember my shortcuts, but right now I can't. So let me stick to what I do before. So you see we have an error here because we don't have anything coming from ours. I think we shouldn't get an error because we do have a store here .email. Okay, we didn't close that. So we can go ahead and format that, and lastly we can just go ahead and emit. So we can use store.dispatch. So I want to emit update dispatch message. So it's just similar to update messages action. You can now dispatch the message the user sent to the other user. So this is going to totally return false because the person sending this is going to return true. So we have to find a way to get an active user. So an active user should be different from whoever that is using the mobile phone. So I was thinking, okay, what if we did this way and just set this to false, because it can only come in when I'm the one receiving or when the user is the one receiving. So the sender becomes false automatically, while the sender becomes true if the sender is the one sending it out. So on the sender's mobile device is true, but on the other mobile device is false. So there is nothing wrong with that, and I can just go ahead and refresh. So on my cell phone and also on my emulator, both of them are logged in. So for here, Sam is 72, while James is TSLS. So I'm going to click on James, and on my device, I'm going to click on Samuel. So you could see both of their chats are showing, and I'm going to send a message from here. Hi. Hopefully, I didn't get a message, but the message was able to send. I didn't get it, but it should definitely send. And I'm not yet getting any message on my mobile phone. So let's kind of figure out where the problem is. So I kind of checked some things, and I realized that the problem we had is just a minor thing. You just have to come over to these chat actions. So right here, instead of us to use the right way of doing it, we just put a comma there. We should put colon. So that was why we had that error. So if we check back in our console, you could see right now we have access to that room ID, and both users can be able to join with that room ID. So I had to like comment so many things in order to find the error, because I was sure that we got everything very right and it's fixed. So let's proceed. And right now, two users can be able to join a single room ID. And one more thing is, inside this inbox, we can now dispatch the message sent to us by another user. So let's refresh, and after the refresh, we are going to be able to send message from my mobile phone to this user here, and also from this user to my mobile phone. So I'm going to open James here and also open Sam here, and I'm going to say hi. So I kind of cleared all the messages from our compass. So if you check here, there is no message here, but I'm going to send a message. Then I think, okay, let me check my phone, and I'm going to send from there. And we are still having some restrictions. Something is still not right. Let me kind of figure out what the problem is again. So I kind of check, and I don't think we do have an error. So the only thing was that we didn't like add a reducer for this. So come over to reducer, and we can now say if action is update dispatch message. We can now perform some action. So the first one we want to do is to create a dynamic list of messages with store.state.messages, and I also have to check if any message has same ID. So this is capital L. So I can now use dynamic message checker. So it's just similar to what we did here, but let's just go ahead and do it so that we can understand more better. So we can use that messages dot where we give it a name. You can say MID is equals to action dot update message ID. We can't find, we have update message. It's kind of showing us that something is not actually right. So let's check in our types. So in our type here, I will just change this to message, which is also cool. And coming back here, sorry, in our reducer, we can just use message. Yeah. So that's it. I can now say if message checker dot length is greater than 0, do nothing else. We can use the messages dot add action dot message, and then lastly we can now return state dot copy with. We want to replace the messages to messages. Yeah. So we have done this, and now let's refresh, and hopefully when I send a message from my emulator to my cell phone, I should be able to see the message on my cell phone, and also from my cell phone to this user over here. So they're almost done. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click on both users. I'm going to click on James, and on my phone I'm going to click on Sam. And this time around I think it should work. So I'm going to say hi. So you could see automatically it shows me hi. I can say sorry James, how are you? I can reply to James. So I replied to James, and I didn't actually see anything. I can't tell why. But let's say James sent another hi. It doesn't reflect as well. So something is really wrong somewhere. And where can it be? So I figured out that we still have this as ID and also as ID, which is going to be like a double duplicate message. So on this one we have underscore ID and also underscore ID, and from our inbox here we are dispatching and underscore ID. So the unique ID probably might be the cause, but let's refresh and try again. And I'm sure this time around we shouldn't have a restriction. We should just have a smooth flow of everything. Let me just quickly so I'll just quickly clear messages. So it seems like it's not wanting to load up, but okay, let me click on these users again and try to chat with each other again. So for my cell phone, I'm sending hi once more time, and you could see it. I can say, how are you? So I can say, how are you doing? And you can see it immediately shows there. I can say, I'm fine, good, and you. So my cell phone is actually showing right now. So I'm gonna go back and come back here. So when I come back here, you should definitely load the messages for both users, but it's not loading it up. So let's go ahead and see what the problem is again. And the problem, I think, is because when I was fixing this, I commented this out. So yeah, I suspected so. And let me refresh one more time. So now I've restarted it again. So for my cell phone, let me just send for my emulator, hi. I can see it clearly on my cell phone. I say hello, I'm good. And I can say here, how are you doing? I can just send it and I can see it. I can say good, good, good. Let's say good. And you could see right now it's showing. So when I go back and come back here and lose that message. So the only thing we are lacking here is for the fact that we are not sorting it using the timestamp. So like this, I'm back. Let me see what I can send again. I can send a message, and yes, I can send a message as well. So I will send yes over here. So you could see that yes over here. And when I go over to Nadine and send hello Nad, and send it and come over to this James. So James messages are going to load, but Nadine messages are not going to load. So for the sorting, it's very simple. If you want to sort it like I said earlier, it's very simple. Just at this inbox, we have load unique chats. So okay, not in load unique chat, on group unique chats. So whenever our message opens, so you can populate all the single messages that we are getting from our messages, populate it to these unique messages, then loop through the array and sort it and return a fresh array of sorted messages with unique timestamps to specify when the messages are set, because that's what you can use to rearrange this array. Then replace the messages from our chat state, these messages over here, all messages or messages, where is it? Yeah, the messages over here. So replace it with the one that you've already sorted, and you're gonna have a fresh and a very neat, well organized message. So we've come to the end of this tutorial, and this app is what we are going to be using for the demo. So there is nothing like we built an app and used a different app for a demo while we did something else. This is what we are going to be using for the demo. You will find in the intro. So I've not even done the intro at this point, but if you have come this far and you have really tried, I appreciate that. But one more way you can appreciate me is to hit that like button and also the subscribe button, and also put down a comment so that YouTube can show these videos to many people that are willing to learn Flutter and also how to create Flutter Redux chat application with Node.js, MongoDB, and Express.js. So thank you once more time. Please do make sure you hit that like button and also the subscribe button, and see you on our next video and the intro.